Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Love with Dr. John O'Connor. Today's guest, Chef James Avery, is absolutely an impressive individual with a ridiculous resume, including working alongside the GOAT, Gordan Ramsey. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. What's up, buddy?
So today, James, we're going to talk about everything that's got you to where you are today as far as, the chasing of the dream to be, one of the top chefs in the United States to working alongside Gordan Ramsey. But obviously when we were offset talking a little bit, I was pretty amazed with one of the things that when I think of chefs, and I run into a lot of them, they're not as fit and well put together as you. So kudos to you on that, brother.
Thank you.
But one of the things that I thought was pretty amazing in your history is that you actually had a pretty severe back surgery as a kid.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of open up with that, consistent with what Tough Love is, the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, big compliment saying I'm one of the best chefs in the country. I'm definitely not, but I've been able to put together a pretty impressive resume and career, but it's all connected. So I'm sure we'll get into that, but I really appreciate the compliment. That was nice to hear. As far as my back goes, yes, when I was a young kid, I played all contact sports growing up, hockey, football, lacrosse, and I had some pretty severe injuries to my lower spine, L5-S1 specifically. I had compound pars fractures that we tried to get them to heal on their own. I spent a couple summers bedridden, actually. But ultimately, the doctors decided if I really wanted to have any normal life without chronic pain, which is debatable now, I needed to have the surgery. So in 1997, at 16 years of age, I had this surgery.
You had it fused.
Had it fused, yeah. So
amazing.
L5-S1, they're all one right now.
Well, I got to tell you, we've thrown down in the gym a couple of times. You move great, and God knows you're a walking machine. So you
Yeah.
you definitely make that surgeon look good. You're a good advertising piece.
Yeah, made out of metal. It's it's a big reason why I stay fit and stay mobile and stay active. I've been there. I've been bedridden, like I said. I've been incapacitated to do like anything normal. And it's like, it makes things, it just gets worse, right? Like, you can't move, so you gain weight, so you can't move, and your back hurts and you get stiff, and then you're stressed, and then your cortisol levels are high, then you have all these stress hormones and your inflammation gets high. So it's like, it took me a long time, decades to really figure out the magic recipe, no pun intended, to like make sure that I'm able to do
Stay
this
in that healthy zone.
Yeah, exactly right. And I tell, even the guys that come to work for me, it's a very easy profession to fall into the gutter. You're working late hours, you have access to food, to alcohol. So it's very easy to get in this trap where you're not taking care of yourself physically and mentally.
Sure.
So I tell a lot of guys, if you want to be successful as a chef, like you really need to, it's a contact sport, and you really have to take care of your body and your core and have good movement and function, and that's just for the physical side. And forget about the mental side. You definitely want to have that kind of outlet to keep your mind tight and fresh. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So one of the things when we're picking our guests to interview, such a parallel for me to be at 16. I was paralyzed with a spinal virus, and it affected me in a way where the whole left side of my body was paralyzed. And it was nice to hear someone evolve at that. You get forced into it, right? Because you really didn't line up. You didn't sign up for having a spinal fusion at 16, 17 years old. And, but I think that perspective gave you that like old soul mindset that as you went through your 20s and 30s, and now here you are in your early 40s, you're in fantastic shape, and your perspective is long game, and it's always been long game.
100%, and I lived through my teenage years, and I couldn't work out. I couldn't lift the weights I wanted to, or do the activities that my peers and friends were doing. And to be honest with you, I was a 38-inch waist in high school. I mean, I was heavy. When I had that, when I hurt my spine and had this surgery and was bedridden, and I couldn't work out for a year at a time, and you're eating what kids ate in the 90s at Otis Spunkemeyer cookies for breakfast, pork roll, eggs, and cheese, from Jersey, of course. Yeah. So, I blew up. And I when you're out of shape young, it stays with you. Like something, it puts a chip on your shoulder. again, not just because of the self-esteem side or any of that, but just like I couldn't do the things that my friends were doing.
Let's be honest, we're in New Jersey. Everybody's got a mouthpiece, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so like I think getting, and then finally getting healthy in my early 20s, and again, like life's been a roller coaster.
Sure.
Life goes in and out of balance. I say this a lot, but having that appreciation in my older years now of what it feels like to be in shape, it's I'm much more motivated now than
absolutely. I can see it. I can see it when we're hitting the gym and the way you talk about stuff. That's one of the things that when we are aligned with our guests and we talk to our audience, it's so important. Tough Love, the podcast was created, a message about talking about our guests and what they've gone through. Right. And, coming back and seeing the way you train and the way you move. And, obviously, your big leap to stardom, if you will, was working alongside Gordan Ramsey. And when I'd asked you about that offset, it was crazy to hear the work volume and hours per day you guys do.
Yeah.
And, I grew up in the food business, but it's different when you're talking about maybe possibly one of the best chefs, or at least internationally recognized.
Oh, yeah.
You're working at a pace that's, second to none.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about how you got, and I'm sure our listeners want to know, how did you get there, the mindset that had to get you to Gordan Ramsey and then to earn his respect the way you did?
Well, I mean, there's no instruction book to get there, right? Like, it's like, I can't, the way I did it was I showed up every fucking day, all day, every day. And I never wavered from my work ethic. I wasn't a great student. I always wanted to make money. I'm bringing you back to high school. I mean, that's how I ended up working with Gordan Ramsey. And because again, I hurt my back. Sports was taken away from me. Okay, well, what am I going to do with my time? I'll deliver pizzas. I can make money. Built this strong work ethic at a young age. That came with me to college. Through college, even though I partied and had a good time, I worked in bars, nightclubs, restaurants, valet, hotels. I stayed in the hospitality business, fell in love with it, realized that, I actually have a shot of making a go at this as a career. And that was at 21, 22. And I just really put my blinders up. I became a father at a young age. My wife was 21. I was 24 when we became parents. That put a lot of things in perspective for me. And, I tried getting out of the business. I tried construction, tried personal finance, but around 25, 26, I said, this is what I want to make a go at. And I put my face to the grindstone and never let off the wheel.
And that's when you went to culinary school?
Well, I already got into culinary school. I'm very sorry about it. So backing up in college, I went to college in Orlando, Florida, and I worked in restaurants all around, the greater Orlando area in hospitality. Decided after college it was maybe I should go to culinary school. Went to culinary school in Fort Lauderdale. Met my wife, who grew up 15 minutes down the road from me, and she got pregnant. We moved back to New Jersey. So I found myself in New Jersey. Like, what am I going to do now? That's when I started dabbling in maybe I should be getting construction, or her family did personal finance. I tried that, and it just wasn't for me. I always had this really strong entrepreneurial itch. And a love for hospitality, for the food and beverage industry. So I just kept pursuing that. But I ended up taking a job in Atlantic City, and I wanted to work for the best chef I could find. And Michael Mina had a restaurant at the Borgata in Atlantic City. The chef at the time running it was this guy named Anthony Amoroso, amazing chef. We're going back like 15 years ago. He had just beaten Morimoto on Iron Chef America. So I went and worked for him, and I just worked really hard, and he had a connection with Gordan Ramsey, and I ended up helping Gordan on a Kitchen Nightmares behind the scenes. I ended up getting on camera with him, and then we just kind of built a chemistry. So right place at the right time.
Sure.
But a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of just never relenting, just finding the right mentors, finding the right place to be. And that's how I did it. And I think that honestly, it's hard to explain to people because I did get there by luck, but I got there.
But you had to stay.
Exactly. I got lucky because I was ready to have the luck.
Yeah.
I could have flopped. I could have not shown up and not done a good job. And, but I attribute a lot of that to my love of fitness and my love of taking care of myself and always trying to show up and be a well-rounded person, the best version of myself. And I think a guy like Gordan Ramsey respects that about me. I'd like to think that, Yeah,
I like that. So one of the neat things was, hearing about that, and what I was super impressed with, you just recently were filming with him, right? And you were talking something about 17 or 19-hour days, and you stepped out of your 2 restaurants that you own in Asbury. What was it like going back? Because it's been about a 10-year run now with him, right? So what was it like going back 10 years later, all that you've learned being now, not just working alongside him, the Atlantic City time, but having 2 restaurants post-COVID and all that. How was it going back as, a little bit more of a seasoned veteran?
It was interesting. When I first started working with Ramsey, I was in my 20s. Now I'm in my 40s. So I have a way different head on my shoulders. It was good. I mean, part of it was like going back to camp and seeing all your buddies you haven't seen in 10 years. There's a lot of people that are involved in making a television show of that scale, like hundreds. So it was fun to go back and see a lot of my old friends. Being around Chef, it's great. All I can tell you is it's high pressure. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on. You're training the contestants, who are essentially cooks in the restaurant. So you're training people, you're accommodating guests, you're setting up challenges. There's a lot of moving parts to doing it.
Sure.
It's a really difficult job, and there's no training for it.
It's just life.
You just have to be the kind of person that can just be like, I need to figure this shit out now.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people can do that. And I think
it brings me back to a Navy SEALs book, right? You got to be able to detach and look at it and process, and think on the move. Right?
Exactly right. And take, criticism well and be okay being really uncomfortable. That's like such a cliche thing to say now, like, oh, you'll be uncomfortable, but literally
you're getting roasted.
And just roasted, but just, a lot of moving parts, a lot of, you just have to be able to split, and you have to have a lot of different skill sets. So it was intense, but again, he's one of the most inspiring people I've ever been around. And
love that.
And just being around him makes all of it worth it, because you just
sponge,
see
right?
You want to be a sponge. You I hope just some of his magic sparkle can just end up on me.
So the neat thing, and I always like to be a student of delivering a podcast. And one of the things that I thought was invaluable was what you said about, I was thinking about, hey, you're just a chef, or you're just, you're a restaurant owner and this and that. But really, you're a business, and something even bigger. Obviously, Chef Ramsey is a business. And I see it with you. When I came down at, Asbury Park to, meet you, the brand, that James Avery brand is solid. Is that a lot you learned from him as far as walking around and being so personable? And because honestly, I would have thought you were Mayor Avery. We were down there. I don't think every spot we popped into, we were grabbing high fives and, and getting holiday cards. Yeah.
I've been around a while. I've been around in Asbury for a decade now, but definitely. Is that something I learned from Gordan Ramsey? Yeah, absolutely. The guy, he is an international brand, I'd say an empire at this point. And, seeing how he stays relevant, stays involved in multiple things. He's not just focused on restaurants, and maybe it's TV shows, or it's pots and pans, or he's huge into charity. He's always involved. I think seeing that it's not something you can just learn from somebody, but it's definitely something that you can watch and you wow.
Sharpen the blade.
Yeah, exactly right. That's inspiring. That's what he's doing, or that's how they're doing it. Listen, the guy is the greatest of all time by every metric imaginable. To duplicate that, I don't know if it could ever be duplicated. But just again, trying to figure out how can I get multiple things going? How can I be as much like him as humanly possible? It's inspiring, and you try to pick his brain. You try to learn from watching him and seeing how he conducts himself in his business. It's really.
Well, I think the tie-in is also you have some uniqueness, right? Again, being a chef that's super fit. That's one of the things. Very similar to myself. When being in healthcare, especially physical medicine, I always thought it was they go hand in hand. I think the neat thing when I was asking about, some of the pointers, he's like, James, use your body as a vehicle. And I think it's something that we're toying with the idea with now. But I think more importantly, I think that's something that, goes a long way when you have to kind of know your brand, right?
Yeah.
Now let's take a segue here for a sec. What was probably, coming off that show, again, you said it 10, 15 years ago, what was the hardest thing you had to go through, in your, progression as a chef early on? And then we'll get to COVID.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to make any bones about it. When you make the decision to become a chef, like you're not, most of the time that somebody chooses that profession, it's not to end up on TV. I didn't plan on ending up on TV. I didn't plan on being, Gordan Ramsey's on-camera sous chef. That was never in the goal. You're signing this up for a very, it's a very humble, thankless job. And I think getting into it and working long hours and working hard and not seeing the reward, your 20s you just get beat up, and then you get to your 30s and you're like, okay, I'm making money now, but you're not really, you're like a sous chef making, I think I was making like 40 grand a year. I was like, I'm making it now. I finally got this figured out. There's just so much sacrifice your family has to go through. So I think that was really hard. By the way,
you had a little one.
But I have 4 little ones. One's not so little anymore. She's going to college. But, I'm trying to change that too. That is something I've been focused on. But I think, really going through the early parts of that, I'm sure it's similar in your profession when you're building a practice. You're going to school, you're not making any money, or you're just trying to cut your teeth in any industry. That's definitely difficult. And just the amount of time and effort that just, years go by and you're like, I'm not getting anywhere with this.
Yeah.
I'm just not getting anywhere.
I'm going to share a little of my personal experience to that. I was probably late 20s, early 30s, and at the time, and I was crushing it in the sports performance training with all the basketball training with our similar people we know, Coach Sagona and all that crew. And I was on the go, and it seemed like it was great. And then we looked at our bank balance, and I was like, I had $3. And I felt like the morning motivation that I listened to with Dwayne Johnson, that he went to his pocket and he had like a 5, a 1 and some change, and he rounded up to $7. And I kept saying to myself, because I was like, God, I'm working so hard. And, I love the people I got to work with, but they were sucking the life out of me.
Yeah.
And we were at a continuing education. It was... It might have been 19 years ago, 20 years ago. I think Johnny was a baby. I think Jess might have been pregnant with him. And I was like, I got to step away from training a little bit. I got to focus on the clinical practice because I need to evolve. I need to be able to look and have some financial stability. I want to feel better about my identity as a person in the community, other than being this person you show up everywhere and they're high-fiving you because they're kids, the all-star, but I'm broke,
Right. Yeah.
And, so for me, that was a big thing. What was the push that got you, because I think you've been in the restaurant business now in Asbury for almost 10 years, correct?
Yeah.
And what was the push to start those establishments?
Well, so always entrepreneurial minded. I did know that when I started this, it wasn't to work at other people's restaurants or get a cushy job at a country club. It was like, I want to build a brand. That's really my passion, is building brands in the restaurant space. So that was always there. The question was, when do I do it, or how do I go about doing it? So, let's go back. I was, in my late 20s, I started working in Atlantic City, and that was kind of what led me to Chef Ramsey. I had spent some time as a consultant on Kitchen Nightmares, and I had said, I ended up on camera, took a couple of years off, got hired as an executive chef, opening up restaurants for an operator out of New York City, Be Our Guest, who had multiple concepts going into Atlantic City. I spent 2 years really running one of my own, I was the chef of one. It was the Mexican concept, Dos Caminos, but I assisted in opening 3 other sister concepts, and really got to see how these brands, these companies open up multiple units. And then before you know it, I was, getting called to go out to LA to do Hell's Kitchen and be Chef Ramsey's on-camera sous chef. So I did that for a few seasons, and I'd come home and I'd get a job for 6 months, and then they'd call me and I'd go back. And I was like, okay, at this point in time, I now have 3 kids. I love the TV gig. It's amazing. But you know, now I'm making decent money. Now I've got a brand. I'm 32 at the time. And I was like, you know, maybe I got to cash this in right now, because Asbury was just on the up and up. I had a lot of momentum behind me with the TV show and just the things I learned and all that. So I said, I want to be home and focus on my family, and maybe I can build a business, and that's really what led me to do it. It was time. And that was 10 years ago. Literally, that was June of 2014 when I made the decision to embark on that journey. And I'm glad I did it. I had things I had to do. I had a family I had to get going. I had to cut my teeth in the business owner world. Space, right? Yeah, like I really had to do that, and I'm glad I did it. You know, it hasn't been easy. It's been hard. I've gone through pandemics and
let's talk
labor
about the
crises.
I think that's for me. You know, the pandemic was the
PTSD from that.
The beginning of me, and I acknowledge it on my most recent episode of Tough Love. I touched physical breakdown. I bottomed out with depression, you know, marital woes. I got myself in some issues, and, you know, COVID, I know we shared about that. You know, share what that was for you in the restaurant, because I know you were a vocal in Asbury, and you were really trying to help all your brother and sister restaurant owners trying to have a voice and be heard and try to get open.
Yeah, I mean, look, I voluntarily closed. You know, I had a feeling my birthday was Friday the 13th. You know, my wife's birthday was that Sunday. And I just had a feeling we were going to shut down. I said, listen, I think we should close. Let this thing cook off for a few weeks, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And we did that. And then 2 weeks in, I'm still closed, and there's Wawa's are open, and there's Home Depot's open, and the interest at the banks was still rolling, and certain people were allowed to make more money than they ever made before. Meanwhile, restaurants basically had a gun to the back of their head saying, you can't open. I don't want to get into the politics of it. I don't want to get into like, you're killing people's grandmothers because you want to open up. It's like, no, if we're in this together, let's close. And everybody can stop making money until we figure out what we're doing. That's why I was so vocal about it. And then I just felt like restaurants, it just wasn't really, they weren't making decisions really fairly. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, no, there was definitely a discrepancy.
And it changed the trajectory. And I remember just sitting there like, am I done? Is my life over? I've spent all this time. I walked away from a TV career. I've invested hundreds of thousands of hours of my life into trying to build something that now I feel like they're literally just taking away, and it might become obsolete, which by the way, we are still 4 years later seeing downstream negative impacts of what happened. And I don't care what anybody says. Like, I'm not here to bitch about that. That's really not it. But look at the labor market. Look at inflation. Look at all these things that are impacting restaurants. And
we just closed our biggest facility. You know, we took a hit on the chin. It was like a 2-year hole.
Yeah.
And then when some of the rates changed and new owners came into taking over the industrial property, it just was unbelievable what it turned into. It looked like it was a $20,000 a month thing, and all of a sudden it was a $45,000 a month thing that was just a life sucker. Yeah. You know, and I get it.
Yeah, and it aged me. You know, so we went through COVID for, it felt like forever. It was really what it was. Pretty much by the end of summer of 21, we had like a couple flare-ups here and there, but it was kind of winding down by the end of 21. Now, mind you, I opened up another restaurant like in 2021, the Black Swan. So I had the Bunny Reed. I decided that, you know, a restaurant had closed down the street from me, and it was time to do another restaurant. And it was a huge leap of faith. I just like, you know what, screw it, let's go. Like, that's my swing the fucking hammer. That's my MO. And let's do it. And we did it. But you know what? Right after COVID, my father passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
And it was unfortunate because, you know, we had just gone through a year and a half where I really wasn't spending time with him. Then I opened a restaurant, wasn't really spending time with him. And then, you know, my brother went to his house to check on him, and I saw the 10 missed phone calls from my brother, and I knew it wasn't going to be good news. So that happened, and then I just went through like a deep depression. So it was like, you know, I just closed a business prior to COVID, then COVID happened, then I opened a restaurant, which is really like a grueling thing to go through, especially like when you're on the back of a business failure, on the back of a pandemic. And now my father dies. I was like, I went into a depression for like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And
Been there.
yeah. And it was, that, so
Bring me there. How'd you get out?
I'll never forget, February of 2022, I was just miserable. I literally didn't recognize myself in the mirror. Physically, mentally, I was like, this is just not who you are. This is not who are you? I don't even know. This is not who you are supposed to be in life.
Like you didn't evolve. You were actually
right.
You were devolving.
It was, it was a big eye opener too. Because here's the interesting thing about my father's passing was that I was the age he was when I was born. When he died, so I was like, I'm literally like half my father's age. And he's dead now. So I'm like, am I halfway over? And then I just started doing all these weird games in my head, like shit.
The scenario, how's it going to go?
If I live to be as old as my dad, I will live as long without him than I did with him. And I started then I started thinking about my kids. And then I started thinking so in a roundabout way, I went through a midlife crisis at 41 years old. And it was and not a midlife crisis like I wanted to go buy a motorcycle and grow my hair long. It was like, okay, well, fuck. This isn't what I want out of life. This isn't what I want to do. I'm going to expire pretty soon, and relatively soon in the
grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of the history of the world. I don't have much more fucking time to become the person I want to be.
And you're not there yet.
Right, and I'm not even close. I'm not even there yet. I'm like, yeah, I've had some wins. I've done some cool shit. But at the end of the day, I don't look the way I want to look. I don't feel the way I want to feel. I'm not earning what I want to earn. I'm not, spending the time with my family the way I want to spend time. So I started kind of doing a big inventory, and I went to fucking work on it. And when you're really on task and on purpose, you get out of depression relatively quickly. I think so. And that's how I did it. And that was, it's
so
about
it was
2.5 years
fitness,
ago.
it was mental discipline.
Yeah.
And you talk about a lot of neat things, and I went through it with the breath work, and we're very similar in that way. You took it from the inside out. You went from the mind, body.
Yeah.
And when the mind got right, the body followed right behind.
100%. And you get to learn new things that just make you better. I got into transcendental meditation. And I got into, and I was getting into this stuff all along. Even prior to the pandemic, I was very active in jujitsu. I was doing Muay Thai. I've always been in and out of fitness. I've always been in and out of cold. I was doing cold plunges 8 years ago, when at Bear and Perch here in Freehold.
Sure.
So I've always been interested in that stuff. But really, again, when I was coming out of that depression, I really just doubled down on it all. And I started taking what I already knew, learning more things. I think having that stuff just really, it gives you a very, very impressive tool belt or tool chest to kind of overcome a lot of difficulties in life.
Agreed. For me, it was pretty similar. I think for you, it was the looking in the mirror, and Dad's passing was a reflection of wow, where he was and where I'm at. I'm not happy.
Right.
And right around 40, I got to say, I kind of had the same kind of effect, but it didn't really punch me in the face until COVID, which was 45, 46.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the funny thing about it is, I know you have a little army at home with 4 kids. I was blessed with the training that it was the fountain of youth, because I had all these young kids around me all the time, and I got to inspire them and work out alongside them. And, again, to do that job, it's much like how we have to stay, healthy, and it's nutrition, it's what goes in our body, it's how we take care of our body.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, my body's my temple, I have to take care of it. And I started noticing, just like when you said, I don't recognize myself. I saw pictures you and I were going through, and it was that 42 to 45. And one of the pictures, God, it looked like David Goggins when he's like, I don't know that guy.
Right.
I looked at my stomach and I looked like Grimace.
Right.
And, I stopped doing the work.
Right. Yeah.
And, I look at my alarms because, when you buy a new phone, everything transfers, right? And I had people from 15 years ago that were working in the city that were grinders that would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'd say, you know what, why not me, right? So literally I'd have GTFU, get the fuck up, and I'd have their initials, and the alarm would go off, and I'd be challenging myself, he doesn't work out, fuck it, I'll do it too. And all of a sudden that person went away. And then it was funny because it was like picking the scab. Like when I look back, I started to kind of like falling apart and I started getting dinged.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of the physical things, which like, you put a Band-Aid on it, you rub some dirt on it, you keep going. Right. But then for us, and I love learning from you, walk around, tell me about the food business, the cost, staff turnover, staff showing up, all the different things you deal with. And for us, and I don't want to go on a political rant, but for us, it was healthcare, the change in the reimbursements and the change in the environment that we were in, that we prided ourselves that a velocity patient, we treated 18 and maybe now well over 20,000 would say the place is immaculate. The staff is like an army, they're everywhere. And it hit us, our accountants at the time, the accountants we have now are excellent. The accountants at the time was like a small firm and like it was a one-man team. We didn't really have eyes on it. And we got eyes on it. It was disheartening. Like we're not making any money. We're broke.
Isn't it? And you're generating revenue.
We're generating a ton of money.
That's the craziest thing. When you're generating a lot of revenue and nothing's sticking to the bank account, you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
James, legitimately, I'll never forget it. I had gotten my individual return and I was so proud of myself. I think I called my dad and I was like, hey Pop, I had a 7-figure return this year on like what I brought in from like the carriers and whatnot. And it wasn't my income return yet, right? So, I was so proud, like walking around like a peacock. I had chest out, this and that. I think it was like $1.2, $1.4 million, whatever it was. And that same year, and I was picking up Saturdays, we were gaining momentum. We had a crew of people on Saturdays. It was just wonderful energy. And I'm like, you know what? Hey, young enough, I'm like, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna suck it, I'm gonna do it. And I kind of felt because like, one thing when you work, with your partners, your wife and this and that, and she's doing the book, she's like, there's no money. And I'm thinking to myself, it's the most money I've ever made, like $400,000 or $500,000 more. And then we had like 5 or 6 providers working alongside us. And I'm like, I saw the return and I was like, I literally made like a fraction of what I brought in.
Yeah.
That was the finisher. And that's when I literally was like caved. I don't want to work on Saturdays anymore. I was like, hey, listen, I'm not working this hard. Yeah. And anybody that's not covering themselves in the practice, fire them. And I never was that before. It was always like give, love, serve, take care of everybody. They want a day off, they want a sick day, give them the whole day, pay this and that, like be so generous. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, am I going to work until I'm 60 or 70?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't care about that if I was having fun, loving it, to survive. And, when I've been preaching as a coach, as a trainer, as a father to my kids, like, we don't survive, we thrive.
Right.
We show up every day to be great. We don't show up just to be there and attend an event. And like everything that I was preaching was like not a thing. I felt like I was kind of falling apart. Talk to me now. I know we've had some great rap sessions over the last couple of days and weeks. What's the next year look like for James Avery?
Well, I wish I could articulate that in a eloquent way. Unfortunately, the world is just constantly evolving and changing. Challenges are constantly presenting themselves with me and my partners. And, I will open up restaurants and run restaurants as long as I am physically able to, as long as the economic viability is there, as long as the real estate deals continue to make sense. And people want to come to work and learn in restaurants.
Learn the craft.
Right? I always say I can control the controllable. So listen, I know how to open up restaurants. I know how to, write menus and cost things out and, find a location and do all the things it takes to open a restaurant. But, I will still need to find the landlord who wants to give me a reasonable deal. I still want to have to find, partners that are willing to invest and take a risk and believe in a bigger vision and ultimately be able to create the kind of establishment or restaurant that can give people appropriate wages for what we're going through. Those are all real challenges that I'm facing
on a regular basis. Yeah.
When I just heard of I'm not going to say the name of it, but a huge institutional seafood restaurant down by me in the shore is closing because fuck it, let's build condos. We'll make more money building condos than we will running a restaurant there. So been open for 50 years. I'm hearing that they're going to close and build condos. You're seeing that all the time now. So it's like, damn, Like, I don't know what's going to, and I think a lot of this was, again, as an effect of COVID, real estate skyrocketed, inflation skyrocketed, people are struggling to go back to work. And I can't say I blame people for not wanting to go back to work because everything's so damn expensive now. But I'm trying to fight the battle. I'm trying to figure out I'm not a fucking quitter. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like I told my manager partner the other day, I was like, listen, like, people don't want to be hostesses in restaurants. I get it. Okay. So then what does a restaurant look like if you can't find a hostess? Okay. I saw this thing today. No bullshit. Restaurants in New York City are now using kiosks. So when you go to pay at the restaurant, the person you're talking to on the screen is in the Philippines.
Wow.
That's like where the world, and I don't like that. Just for the record, I don't think that's the but answer. It's like let's just keep throwing tech and taking jobs away, which is a fucking problem. So, and so as it relates to the bigger conversation about us, I don't know. I don't know what the world of restaurants is going to look like over the next year, 3 years, 5 years. God knows where they're going to be in 10 years. I mean, part of me feels like restaurants are going to become private clubs. You're going to have one part of society that has to get Uber Eats and Taco Bell, and the other one that's a member at a private club, and they get to go out for steak dinner. That's kind of like, that's my fear of where things are headed, because it's the way things are going.
Quick last question before we wrap up today.
Yeah.
If you had to pivot and take yourself outside of the restaurant space.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So
what would that look like?
So for me, what is it? Well, yeah. So back to your point, like, I will do the restaurants, but there are things that I'm passionate about: health and wellness, nutrition, helping people who have busy, hectic lifestyles, hectic jobs. How can I offer value to them besides just showing them how to make a beautiful dinner? So the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going to focus on a lot of things. I'm going to try to get some other verticals and avenues, and keep finding way to generate value for those around me. Is really what I'll be doing over the next couple of years.
I love that. And to you guys out there, it was kind of a loaded question. James and I have been working on some ideas, and when you have the backstory that James has and myself, one of the things that I think that we do collectively together is we bring one hell of an energy and organizational mindset, and a level of living that I think can elevate a lot of people out there. And one of the things that I'm super excited about is the fact that my health journey has been something that I went from my knees and, not taking my knees to pray, but literally got knocked down to my knees and got back up, and had a lot of amazing people around me to help me get there. But I think now, and I feel like you're in the same position, it's time to go out and outreach to people. And you'd said something to me that there's already been waves of people that came out there in the leadership coaching. I think in the 30, 35 minutes we've been on this podcast, there are people in their car driving home from work, and they have their hand on their head. They're like, man, I can't do this, that need people like us in their life, in their corner. And, whether it's helping them understand, hey, take a challenge, bring it back home, bring it to your body, bring it to your mind, rebuild. Yeah. And we're along there with them. So anyway, guys, listen, Chef James Avery, absolutely impressive individual. His story, when I look at my guests and I Google everything that he's done, is absolutely impressive. He is a family man. He's an athlete. He's an incredible restaurateur and chef, and I'm excited to call him a friend. James, thank you so much for joining us today on Tough Love.
Yeah,
look forward to more to come. Guys, our sponsor today was MedRay Laser and Technology. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share, follow, and like the platform that we're offering, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.